If you're a business owner, you need help growing your business, and you're eventually going to soon need a second in command to help you interact with everybody, give you good and bad news about what's going on, and be your eyes and your ears out there and help you run the business. And if you're that second in command, you have to have a very close relationship with the owner to make sure that you stay tightly knit together, very aligned, and grow the business together. But that often, sometimes, many times, falls apart. And eventually the leader, the executive, the owner, the business owner has to replace that second in command. The Tom Hagen character is that second in command.
Tom Hagen.
Tom.
Why don't you say you work for Corleone, Tom?
Let's face it, Tom.
It's easy for you to say, Tom. He's not your father.
As much a son to him as you are Mike.
The Godfather is the executive, he's the leader, and so they have this relationship. And there's one element throughout the whole series that deals with this issue and what causes that relationship to work, but also what causes that relationship to fall apart. And it's what we're going to cover today, and that's what we're going to title this Bad News First. Those of you that are in second in command out there, those of you that are directors of operations, branch managers, executives, want to hear from you first above everybody else the bad news that you find out. That's the agreement, that's the unstated agreement that all executives have with you, whether they've told you that or not. They don't want to hear it from others. Otherwise, you deteriorate the trust that people have in you. But we're going to start with 3 scenes that show that the Tom Hagen character does this really well. But as the second scene happens, he does it less. Then the third scene does it less. And you notice that he starts losing a lot of confidence from the leaders. Why? Because he's not good at bad news first quickly. So the first scene...
I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse.
The Godfather sends Tom Hagen, who's his second in command, to go talk to the director to tell him that, look, we got to do business together. So he starts muscling him.
I'm German-Irish.
Well, let me tell you something, my Mick friend.
Of course, the director gets extremely angry with him.
Now you get the hell out of here!
Thank you for the dinner and a very pleasant evening.
Tom Hagen takes it. His professionalism is abundantly clear, and he looks at him very calmly. Notice how calm he is, and he says the famous lines.
Mr. Corleone is a man who insists on hearing bad news immediately.
And the look of terror in the director's face when he realizes Tom Hagen's totally under control and he has a certain tight relationship with the Godfather. And immediately what you see afterwards, of course, is the horse head scene. Between the 2 scenes, you don't see the conversation. He heard the bad news from the director, immediately went and told the Godfather. They acted on it. He was doing great. So at this point, he's doing a good job. He's keeping the relationship close. That second scene is when the Godfather has been shot. He's coming back from the hospital. They're at the house, and they let the Godfather know.
Since McCluskey's killing, the police have been cracking down on most of our operations.
They hit us, so we hit them back.
Michael. It was Michael who killed Sollozzo.
That Michael has shot the cop, and now Michael's on the run, and you can see the face of disappointment from the Godfather, and immediately the next close-up shot is that of Tom Hagen. Tom Hagen leaves the room and he realizes, oh no, I did not tell the Godfather this earlier. I caught him by surprise. He's creating distance between himself and the Godfather. He realizes he's made a mistake. Then the third scene is the death of Sonny. And you see Tom Hagen sitting by himself late at night, just knowing that he's got to go and tell the Godfather that his son is dead. And, well, the Godfather beats him to it first. He comes down.
Consigliere mine. I think you should tell your Don what everyone seems to know.
That right there is the words you never want to hear as a second in command. The Godfather character does a good job at not attacking him, not correcting him. He'll deal with that later. But trust has been eroded. Those of you that are executives, the lesson for you here is that he did not make it about Tom Hagen. He didn't shoot Tom Hagen out, and neither did he say, well, why didn't you tell me this earlier? Which is what we all tend to go to when we hear things. Because if you go to that, then you're making it personal, you're distracting from the issue, the problem needs to be handled. He just gets back on the chair, being the leader that he is, and he gives some direction on what the next steps are. Hearing it from you is the most important thing that the executive needs to know. It's not that he found out. is that he found out from you. And if you're in second in command and you begin to see that the executives are getting distant and away from you, it's probably because you're not used to telling them the bad things and they're hearing stuff. At least the Godfather told Tom Hagen, hey, I'm hearing something. But most executives won't sit down and tell you, hey, I'm hearing stuff. They just won't tell you, and they'll replace you, which is exactly what happened to Tom Hagen. The fourth scene is the consequence. When there's a leadership swap or there's a restructuring, sure enough, they have to go to Tom Hagen and tell him,
Tom Hagen's no longer consigliere. He's going to be our lawyer in Vegas.
Sonny had told him earlier in an earlier scene, you're just not moving fast enough.
Damn it, if I had a wartime consigliere of Sicilian, I wouldn't be in this shape.
And the way that you keep your reputation as being a strong leader is that nothing that you find out will not be told to the executives. And when everybody realizes that you and the executives are that tight, you create loyalty. But whenever the people or your competition can tell that the second in command and the executives and owners, there's the distance, you create this loyalty because they know you're not talking to the executives fast enough. And so, you know what? I'll let them know later. Okay, that temptation you can't do. You got to talk to them immediately and tell them, look, I'm going to tell you some things, but don't react. Work through me. Let me go take care of things and keep them updated. If you're an executive and you have a second in command that is getting away from you, show them this video. Sit down with them and say, man, we got to talk because I feel you're doing that to me. And the only way to fix this is to recommit and say, all right, from here on out, we're going to draw a line in the sand. I'm going to tell you everything, and I need you to, when I tell you bad news, don't react like Sonny.
Son of a bitch!
And if you can rebuild that commitment between the executive and the second in command, that's the only way to do it. And just pretty much assume you're probably going to have that conversation at least once a month. The primary reason you want to do this is because you put your reputation at risk. So we see in Godfather 2, Tom Hagen has the same challenge because Michael Corleone comes back from a trip and he's meeting with him and he asks for an update. All right, what's been going on?
What about my boy? Did you get him something for Christmas?
I took care of it.
He should have been telling him the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Well, there was something else.
Come on.
And he wasn't getting the bad and the ugly, so Michael Corleone had to dig.
What? Come on, what?
You don't want to make the executive have to dig. Sure enough, it blows up.
Now, can't you give me a straight answer anymore?
Why am I having to drag it out of you, man? Just tell me there's no trust. Why? Because bad news was not being communicated earlier. They're discussing what their move ought to be, and Michael Corleone has to challenge him and say,
I thought you were going to tell me that you were moving your family to Vegas, and that you've been offered the vice presidency of the house and hotels there.
and Tom Hagen gets real bold about it. He says, yeah.
Thought you were going to tell me that.
I turned them down. I mean, do I have to tell you about every offer that I turned down?
And see, by now, it's like he's no longer defending and apologizing. He's now becoming pretty belligerent about the fact that, yeah, hey, Michael, I'm here, man. I don't have to tell you everything, but that's the whole point. There's a level of distrust.
You're going to come along with me in these things I have to do, or what?
So rebuild the relationship, get back to each other's confidence, and remember, good news, great, up front, okay? Bad news first. See you at the movies.